You're listening to Travel Tales with Fergal.
And now that I know that the book's going to be read by other people, I'm really excited. But that was the best day of my life, finishing and going to the sea and feeling surrounded by my imagination. If it doesn't sound too corny, you know.
Not at all.
Because I had a blast with the characters, and they kept me company for 10 years, you know. So it was a really kind of intimate moment.
You just heard my guest Louise Nealon talking about the day she finished her much anticipated debut novel Snowflake, which comes out in May. The book has already been snapped up by Element Pictures, who did Sally Rooney's Normal People and who are currently filming Conversations with Friends. Louise has already been acclaimed as a voice for her generation. I first noticed Louise's writing when she wrote an article on Inisheer for the Irish Times a few years ago. It was so good I read it over and over again. Louise's writing is truthful, moving and very, very funny. I think she has that magic ingredient and is going to be a star. We had a lovely chat about the 5 places and trips that most influenced her writing. This episode is for all lovers of great writing, as Louise gives a unique insight into the writing process. I'll fire into it if that's okay. So we've got loads to talk about, which is brilliant. That was the first time that I've ever had to move an interview because somebody was milking the cows.
Yeah, true story. And I don't do an awful lot of them, so if I refused, it wouldn't have gone down well. So yeah,
that's funny. You know, you say you don't do too often, but I was listening to your interview on Ray Darcy, and you were talking a good bit about milking cows there as well. So you're definitely going to become known as the cow milker.
Yeah, which is awful. Like, my family really do slag me about it because they're like, you'd swear you're in the milking parlour every day, and I'm really not. Like, last time I was out there was, apart from yesterday, was like Christmas Day. So I don't want to paint myself as a dairymaid because I'm really not.
So you're like my guinea pig, because this is the first time that I've actually done it. The interview like this, places that influence your writing or your art, and you sent me some great ones. So if you're okay, I'd love to start with the first one, because that was Inisheer, and that was actually the first time that I ever read anything from you, was an article in the Irish Times. I spent 2 Junes in an Irish college in Inisheer, so I absolutely loved the place, and you really captured the island, the essence of the island, I thought.
I can't believe you read that article. I didn't know that the article was published actually until a year after.
Go in.
And it was the first piece of writing that I've ever gotten published. And it was only my sister, she Googled my name. She was Googling her own name and I came up. She's going to kill me now for saying that. But she was like, Louise, do you know that I entered a travel writing competition? And I came like a finalist, but they never actually told me, or the email got lost. So that was very bizarre, because it was quite, I suppose, an intimate piece of writing about my family. I'd shown it to my family beforehand. So yeah, my family have a house out there. My uncle-in-law, Joe, and every August bank holiday, a group of us go out, ranging from all ages. My great aunt Peggy, actually, she's probably the eldest. Last time she went out, she was 80, and she'd bring the grey goose and the packet of cards, and we'd all have a game of cards with Peggy, and she'd rob you blind. And it's just great crack. We have a great graw for the place. There's a routine. We go jumping off the pier, and it isn't the lap of luxury, really, because we're all in the one house. The adults get beds, but like I'm nearly 30 now, but I still don't qualify as an adult. So we all sleep upstairs. Yeah.
It wasn't even just a mattress, it was a tin mattress.
Really thin. And sleeping bags. But it's great when you're landed in with cousins that, like, my cousins are very young. So like, we don't get to see each other an awful lot, but that weekend, the long weekend, kind of brings us together in a way that's really kind of we get to know each other really well. We're more like siblings as opposed to cousins. Yeah, we'd eat the head off each other, but we'd do anything for each other as well.
I really loved you captured that thing. I could really relate to, you said the games were like 90% verbal abuse, 10% sport,
physical abuse.
and that was our family. And now I've got kids, and the score nearly people. If you ask the score, people probably don't even know what the score is.
No.
And it is a magical place. There's something about, I really fell in love with Inisheer, and the air is kind of salty or something. Just you feel like you're away.
Really weird. You really do. And even coming up to the August bank holiday, my mom's always like, I don't know about the weather this year. Maybe you won't have the weather. And it all really depends on the weather, because if you've good weather, it's amazing. And if crap weather, you're stuck inside eating the head off each other. The weather, it always seems like it's a different country when you go, because you take the plane, the Fisher-Price airplane that you're not sure is going to go in the air at all, or the boat. And when you've good weather, it just feels like you're a world away, but also that it feels like home as well. It's a very special place, because I really do miss it when I'm not there. So I can just imagine what the islanders feel about their home.
I know,
because it has such a special place in my heart.
Like I remember being there and coming back from the Cayley one night, and it was the 21st of June, and all along the coast of Galway there was bonfires, because the longest, and it was kind of pagan and medieval, and it just really etched into my brain, like that memory of their spectacular. And tell us, so the next place is Dublin. I can relate to that as well, because I'm from Clare, and I went to college in DCU in Dublin. It's a big jump, to go up, isn't it, to college, to the big city.
Yeah, and I only live 40 minutes away from the city centre, and it was such a culture shock for me, because the only time we went up to Dublin really was to see the Christmas lights. So it was, but I was such a country bumpkin, and I remember the first day I got so overwhelmed. I got off the train, didn't know where I was going, and I stopped and asked a guard where Trinity was. And he just looked at me and he was like, "Oh, geez, you poor devil." He was like, "If you just keep walking that way, like you'll come across it." And one of my friends, Rebecca, she was like, "I find it great to just go get lost in the city, and then I find my bearings like that." Whereas I was not like that at all. I really needed to know where I was going, so I had a set sort of routine. Like I go to a certain coffee shop before lectures, and I remember once that coffee shop was closed, and I didn't even go to my lecture. I just went straight home, because I was just like, well, I can't go get my coffee, so I can't go to the lecture.
When I came up to college, I remember my first day, it was like a Sunday, arriving up from the country, and I had to get the bus out from O'Connell Street. I knew to get the number 10 bus, but I was on the wrong side of O'Connell Street. So I was going to get a bus south side. Then two old hobos mugged me. And then the bus arrived, and the bus conductor came out, shushed the guys away, and said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "DCU." And he's like, "Well, you're in the wrong side." That was my first day.
God bless Dublin bus drivers.
Yeah.
You got thrown to the wolves there.
But imagine,
Gee,
first
I
day.
had a yeah. So first day, they must have seen you coming.
Exactly. That's exactly what they saw. Greenhorn arriving.
Yeah. I gave a fiver to a bus driver once, and he just sort of looked at me and was like, "I don't take notes, like." And I had no change, so I had to get, this is before like I got a leap card. I didn't even know what a leap card was, and I think Dublin bus drivers deserve a medal, like the good ones who really look out for country bumpkins, and they see you coming, and they just like your man saying, "Go over to the other side of the road there," like a good man, and keep your belongings to yourself.
Exactly, my life's belongings, And was that the start of your writing then, when you were in, or were you always doing it at that stage, when you were in Dublin?
I suppose I was writing stories in primary, but just it was the stories that the teacher would ask you to write, and I really enjoyed doing it, but I didn't really think that you could do it on your own. Like I'd always need the teacher to say, "Okay, you need to write a story," and then I'd write a story. So it was sort of like us all, really. So I never really wrote stories outside of that. Then when I went into secondary school, I did a really uncool thing of we were doing history projects, and I wrote a short story instead of like in the style of like being a Roman at the time, or
Oh, wow.
very uncool.
No, not at all.
Or like medieval history, I like wrote a story about being a knight, and the teachers were kind of like, okay, like whatever you want to do there. And then I had a great English teacher. I had a great English teacher in Leaving Cert. She read a story that I wrote, and she was like, you can really write, and she photocopied it and gave it out to the class. And that was like my first experience being like read by other people other than like my teacher or my parents. And I did English and philosophy because of my teacher that did English and philosophy. She was such a cool person in my life. Like I just wanted to be here, and I wanted to be an English teacher. That I didn't think that I would be able to be a writer. I find all this mad, like the whole, like even being on this podcast is far beyond my wildest dreams. And when I dropped out of college, then she sent me a text to meet up for lunch.
Wow.
And it was like the hand of God reaching out, you know, like, and then she sat me down and she was like, we just had a great chat. And she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I don't know, but I want to write a novel. She was like, send me chapters of it. And that was the first kind of time that I wrote just for myself, really. And I didn't really show anyone what I was writing for a long time. And for a lot of it, it was just thinking about writing as opposed to writing itself. And when I was in college, I did English. So I was reading all these wonderful writers and masters of the forms. So I didn't really feel good enough to be a writer. And it was only in my last years, I did in my fourth year, I did a creative writing course with Deirdre Madden. And she was, and that was, she kind of gave me the confidence to think, okay, I can do this as something just for myself first, but if other people want to read it, that'd be great.
I read a great line from you. You've great one-liners, I have to say. And I read one and it said, I only began to write seriously when I gave up the idea of becoming a serious writer.
Very, very much so, because I put pressure on myself. I always wanted to be a writer. I thought that it was something that only magical people did. Like you were born a writer and you knew it all along. And even now, I still struggle with the idea that I make my living from writing, because in many ways I don't feel good enough. If you do actually just sit down and write and see writing as a verb and not as like a job or some big thing, if you write anything at all, you're a writer. Like in the same way that if you run, you're a runner, you know? And if I found that if I stripped back the idea that it wasn't something to approach with some kind of expectation. It was just an activity that I did that I enjoyed, and not to beat myself up about how many words I was writing or what I was writing or if it was any good, to just do it and enjoy it and try to enjoy it at least. And I really get a lot out of it, yeah.
You know, and I forgot to mention actually at the start, I meant that you have your debut novel coming out in May. So congratulations.
May 13th. Thank you very much.
So
it's called Snowflake. And it's been 10 years in the making. So actually when I went out for lunch with my secondary school English teacher, I had the idea for it. That's an idea that stayed with me over 10 years. Characters changed and the setting changed. It was originally set in America because I wanted to write a big story. So all the big stories were set in America. And now I imagine the characters actually live down the road from me in a kind of parallel universe. So all of the landscape is the same. It's just peopled by different characters to the people in my life. Yeah, it's about a girl. Very much mined from my own experiences. It's about a girl who grows up on a dairy farm and goes to college in Dublin. But where she differs from me is that she has kind of an odd family. Her mom suffers with mental health conditions, bipolar, manic depression, and she believes that she's able to dream other people's dreams. Kind of doesn't really engage with reality. She's locked up in her bedroom. And Debbie gets on really well with her uncle, who lives in a caravan in the back of out the back of their house, and he's a gas character, and everyone loves him. And he's kind of trying to help Debbie to navigate life. So he thinks that going to university, she kind of break free of her mother's kind of where her mother is. So.
And dreams are important. An impression I get from what I've read. Do you have dreams that you go?
I had, I think the funny thing about it is, if someone like say my sister comes into the kitchen and she goes, "Oh, I had a really weird dream last night," I'm not really interested in it. It's kind of boring when people go on about their dreams. And when I wake up, no matter how much I feel like, oh, that was a really good dream, I never really tell anyone about it. But I had a really weird dream when I was 18, and it actually didn't feel like a dream that I had myself. It felt like I was in someone else's head. And then I woke up from that, and that's kind of where the idea came from. And that I had a really weird feeling of feeling dislocated from myself and disassociated from myself. I thought that it would make a great idea for a novel. So I kind of I'm obsessed with dreams and dream literature and myths and legends. I'm actually reading Dreamtime at the minute by John Moriarty. He's great. There's a great interview with him and Tommy Tiernan. When Tommy Tiernan went walking around the country, he dropped into John Moriarty, and
I'm the opposite. I keep having dreams and going, God, waking up going, that'd make a great story, but not remembering. I can never.
Oh yeah, see, yeah. And you find yourself half making it up then.
Exactly.
I used to keep a dream diary. Yeah, I used to keep a dream diary for the book actually, and I found myself being so frustrated by the crap that I was coming out with. I was so disappointed by my own dreams. It was literally like, oh, forgot to put the bins out.
Is it surreal then when you get a book deal and Element Pictures option it, and is that just surreal?
Fergal, I'm still trying to process it, to be honest. It's great, but like in the time that like I got the book deal, coronavirus was just kicking off. So it actually felt the world feels surreal as it is now. And it's kind of like, here's everything you ever wanted, but don't go outside or only stay within 5K. So I'm still not sure if it's real. I don't know if you're real, if this is just all happening inside my head. But yeah, it's really overwhelming but wonderful, and I'm trying to be more excited than nervous or fearful.
Oh yeah. Then you went from Dublin to Belfast to do, was it a writing course or master's there?
Yeah, I did creative writing in Belfast, and all of the experiences that I thought I'd have in Dublin, like I didn't really make friends in university in Dublin. I was very socially anxious, and I thought that everyone was way cooler than me. So, and I commuted as well, commuted for 2 years and stayed up for 2 years. But I had some mental health issues like depression and anxiety. So I always felt like I had like low self-esteem, and I always felt like no one would want to be my friend. So I just went home. And then when I went home, I was like, oh yeah, it's grand, and pretended to have friends, because I didn't want my parents worrying about me, and they were paying fees, But then when I went to Belfast, I made the best friends that I like, friends for life. And it was because I think that I was doing a course that I was really into, like the creative writing, and the city is just, it's a very special place for creative people. I heard Sinead O'Connor on a podcast recently, actually, and she said that Belfast is one of her favourite places and she'd love to live there. She could. Sunny Belfast. And I completely agree. It's cheap rent. There's late night art. There's a theatre company called Accidental Theatre who do improv comedy nights, and there's gorgeous bookshops, book readings, book launches every week, Queen's Film Theatre. There was just so much going on in the city that even like I spent the year not even writing. I just spent it enjoying the buzz of creativity of the place.
And your book has been Element pictures have taken it on. And Sally Rooney, I think, is a big influence, isn't she, over the last years?
I think I owe an awful lot to Sally. I don't know her personally, but she was a year ahead of me in college. I think she's done so much for young Irish female authors without even meaning to. She's like, the very fact that she was like on Barack Obama's reading list, like to be on an American president, respected American president,
exactly.
reading list, as a young female author is incredible. And we've worked a long time for it to level the playing field. And yeah, it's so good to see, especially with all of our history as Irish women being oppressed and the mother of baby homes. Like, Irish women have been silenced for so many years, and it was only a matter of time that we'd find our voice. And I really think there is a cacophony of Irish female voices out there, and it's a reaction to having stuff to say. And Sally Rooney is definitely at the forefront of that. Yeah.
Have you found, like, loads of people talk about writing more or baking or whatever, podcasting during lockdown? How have you found lockdown? Has it helped the writing or not, or does it make a difference?
Yeah, I think it's very individual, and it depends on where your head's at any given day. I wouldn't do writing for relaxation. I don't find it therapeutic. I do find it difficult, and I do treat it as a job. It's sort of like exercise, like before you go exercising, you're really reluctant to go, but then after you've done it, you feel better. So I feel very like that with writing. I'm very reluctant to start, and then after I've done it, I'm like, okay, glad I did that. Job done, sort of. So yeah, I've gotten more into jigsaws and
that's the line I always use with my kids is like, for going for swimming in the sea, is like, you never regret it. You never, after a swim in the sea, you never regret
Definitely
it.
not for the sea, especially swimming in the sea.
You're the first person actually that I've had on, would you believe, on the podcast that has done interrailing. And it was, yeah, I never got the chance to do it, actually. I'm jealous. So, I mean.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of like a thing to do, that I felt very much like a cliche.
No, it is, but but it's a good cliche, It's like,
yeah, I suppose. Yeah. So went 3 weeks with my friends. We're about 23. And yeah, we landed in Brussels first, and then went to Amsterdam, went to Budapest, Prague, and then we went to Corsica as well. Other places way. Yeah, it's mad. You forget. We went to Lake Bled in Slovenia.
Wow.
Which is gorgeous, really gorgeous. That was probably one of the highlights, definitely.
It's interesting that, like, out of the trip you picked Amsterdam. That was the one that jumped out.
Yes. So I read the Diary of Anne Frank late in life. I read it when I was 22, and I wasn't expecting Anne to be so funny. And I really, really related to her an awful lot. And she became a kind of friend. And it just so happened that she lived in an annex during World War II. But I really felt like I had some like deep connection with her, and she just felt like a very wise 15-year-old, because she wrote the diaries when she was 14, 15, 16. And so I chose Amsterdam because the most exciting part of the trip for me was visiting Anne Frank's house. And so, like, I was bouncing around in the queue to it, and they couldn't shut me up. I was so excited to see like the places that she mentions in the diary. And then we went in, and the first thing that we saw was videos of footage of the concentration camp that she died in. And it was very sobering. And I got a land because I had completely forgotten that side of it, really. And a lot of the house was a documentary videos of the likes of her dad, Pim, she called him. And she had a great relationship with him, but he didn't take her as seriously. He said in one of the videos that parents can never really know their children, because he felt like Anne was a funny, kind of frivolous teenager, and he loved her as a daughter, but they didn't really have as deep a connection as he would have liked. And he only got to know her after she died in the concentration camp, and he read her diaries. And he was like, and in there I found a completely different person, and a person full of quiet reflection and wisdom and wit. And I just thought it was such sorry.
No.
I thought it was such a pity that they couldn't have connected in real life. And Anne died in a concentration camp a month before the liberation. And her friend reckons that if she knew, she thought that all of her family was dead. And then one of her friends said that if she knew her dad had survived, she probably would have hung on.
The dad didn't publish it either, wasn't it? Was it the aunt or someone else?
Yeah, he was reluctant for it to be published. He went ahead and in the end he edited it himself. Like, there's a lot of stuff about teenage lust, and she was very harsh on her mom as well. I don't think that the dad wanted that to be known. So there's loads of different versions of the diary. Some of them are a lot more favourable to what the dad wanted than others. But anyways, after I went to the Anne Frank house, we had planned to go pedal boating afterwards, and I was like not in the mood for that. So we went home, or back to the what was it called, Bob's Youth Hostel, and we'd met lads from Galway earlier, so we went out with them that night, and one of them was like, "Oh, who the hell is Anne Frank anyway? And why should you visit her house?" And I bawled crying. It was very embarrassing, and it was like a guttural howl. And I was like, I just got so upset over because I hadn't really processed the way that she died, and how tragic her life was, and the fact that she had so much promise as well. I really do think that she was a genius, and the diary is evidence of that. It's not famous just because it's a diary of a girl in an annex in World War II. It's famous because of the quality of the writing and the wisdom that she had as a teenager. So there's so much lost talent. So anyway, I bawled crying, and my friends had to put me to bed.
Wow.
And I was like, "But Anne Frank's my best friend," and they're like, "Yeah, Louise, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in the morning." And I was like in a 12-bed hostel, like a hostel room. It was like a mixed room. And there was these Swedish lads, and they were like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And they're like, "Okay, well, will you stop crying? Because we have to get up for an early train in the morning." I was so embarrassed. I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry."
I know.
So yeah, the whole of the interrailing, the girls were like, "Just don't mention Anne. Like, we can talk about anything else. We just won't go back and mention Anne."
And
so, yeah.
Could you relate to them that idea that you write stuff and maybe people see ideas that you have, that you haven't expressed? That must be. Is that tricky?
Yeah. Um, I suppose a part of the reason why I wanted to write in the first place is because I feel like I tell the truth when I write. I don't often feel like I tell the truth in my day-to-day life. There's an awful lot of saving face and just going through the motions and not wanting to upset anybody. But there's an awful lot going on in everyone's head. And I feel like I'm my most authentic self when I write. And when I use different characters to explore whatever it is going on in my head. And the thing is, like, you don't really know what's going on in your head half the time as well. So yeah, I very much related to I found it heartbreaking that Anne wanted to have a closer relationship to her dad than she did. And she said one of the things she said is that paper has more patience than people, which I think is a very astute line, especially for a 14-year-old to say. And she said that the reason why she kept the diary, she called the diary Kitty, and she wrote to Kitty because she wanted a friend. And she wanted the kind of intimacy that she didn't really get from the people around her, and that she wasn't able to have. So that's the thing that I get from her, and the thing that I get from reading is that I get a kind of intimacy with writers. Like the relationship between the reader and the writer is a lot more honest than the relationship that you'd have, say, in a day-to-day conversation. And that's the kind of thing that I crave, really.
Yeah. And like, so when you were like, say, your story, your short story that you wrote, that I keep forgetting the title of, what is the title of it? The one that won the competition.
What feminism is.
What feminism is. So when you
feminism is, it's an awful title.
No, it's not. It's just for some reason feminism's the only word that I remember in the title.
Yeah. And, the feminism one.
But it seems like a very personal story, and that's why I'm going. Did you find it hard reading that out loud to a group or not at all?
No. That's something about that I find I'm lucky. Because a lot of writers that I know don't really like the whole reading out your work, or I don't mind it, because I know that first of all, I know that the character isn't me. I also want to be able to tell the truth, and I find that writing fiction is the best way of telling the truth, because you don't really hurt anyone's feelings. You're not standing up and calling someone out. It's just using a story belonging to people who actually don't exist, to articulate things that you feel, but you don't know really what your feelings are around it, or you don't know why you're angry, or you don't know why you're upset at the world around you, really. And that character is, I'm not saying that there isn't a bit of me in that character. There definitely is. But there's also like bits of caveats of stories and details that I got from other women that I felt were important to show, so that even like my ideal reader for that story would be, say, like the dad of a young girl who can finally relate to the way that she sees the world, or a young girl who has gone through some of that, and she's like, oh, I'm not the only person who that happens to, and there's a sense of loneliness and humiliation in that story that I think is very human. And I think the more we show our vulnerabilities as people, the better, really.
And do you sort of think, so when you're, just say when I'm traveling and something happened. Just saying with my kids, like we were doing a walk in the mountains, and one of them nearly fell off a ledge, and I grabbed him. And then at the same time I'm grabbing him, I'm also going, this is going to make a great story.
Make sure you grab him first, not the other way around.
Yeah, exactly.
Will I let him dangle a bit?
Yeah, exactly.
All the time. Like every time something happens on a trip, I'm dying to get back home in order to be able to tell the story, which is mad. But I love when something unfortunate happens or something that makes me look like an idiot happens, because there's a kind of power in that like, okay, at least I can use this for a story.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
I'm glad that's not just me then, you know what I mean? Like, you know.
But it's kind of a comfort at the time.
True. Exactly.
You know, the worse it goes, the better the story's going to be.
Exactly.
You know? So you're nearly wishing misfortune upon yourself.
Place that you mentioned was New York. So you were on a J1. You're over in San Diego. It's funny that you picked New York rather than San Diego. What did you think of San Diego?
San Diego was mad. It was like a big, massive retirement village. Really? I maybe not. Like, I just thought it was really sunny and relaxed. Public transport was an absolute roller coaster. Like, I had never kind of been approached by a man at all, like asking me out or whatever. And you go on one bus. And I went on one bus with my friend and we got asked out about 5 times and we were like, Jesus, where in the world are we? Because Americans are, especially West Coast Americans, I don't know what it is, that they're just so confident. And they were like, oh, we're destined to be together. And you're like, really? And we were as green, like we were 21. I can't believe I survived that trip, to be honest. It was a lot of, like, we went over and we were trying to do waitressing jobs, but all we got in the end was these things called promotion jobs. So we were just like promoting, like a football tournament was one in Santa Monica, and another one was like promoting tequila and vodka in things called liquor stores. But that's where people went in to get bread and milk as well. So you'd be like standing in a t-shirt at a table, and these women would come in with their kids and like pull you away. They'd pull them away from us, be like, get away from that scary lady trying to sell you alcohol. There was about 20 of us living in one apartment. It was a great crack.
It is special. J1, it's a real passage of right, isn't it, for Irish people?
Yeah. And I got really close to the girls that I went traveling with. There was a real intimacy there, and it's something that you'd never experience again. You kind of had, like, it was the best summer of my life, and it was the best summer that I could have had back then. But like, we were sleeping on blow-up beds and the Delta Airlines blanket, and just getting into all sorts of situations. Like, it was mental.
I have a WhatsApp group from friends from college, you know, when we were in America. We were Wildwood in New Jersey, and the guy I was with, I didn't even have a job, and I was going over, and where are you going? Wildwood? Oh, sure, I'll go there. And I was saying to him, we were just on the WhatsApp the other day talking about the J1, and I was saying, like, we had this little 1-bedroom thing at the back of a house, and it was a double bed, and we used to use the curtains as our blanket, you know. And like, you're just going, did this happen? You know?
But we went into an apartment complex, and there was other Irish people. We all sort of congregated when we landed in America. We were all like, oh, you're Irish too. And so we used to go, we were the apartment, we stole, we came across an armchair and a couch in a skip. So we brought it up to the apartment, and everyone came to our apartment because we're the ones who had furniture, you know?
So you went to Vegas as well from San Diego, was it?
Yeah, so went to Vegas as well. I had awful preconceptions about Vegas, that it was a place of hell, being a good Catholic girl, you know. But it was We had an absolute ball. It was mental. The things that we did, like, we had the best time. But when you think about it, like, the reason why we had such a good time was because we had no money and we were absolute chancers. And a lot of my friends were quite like beautiful, beautiful girls, like, and so men would come up to them in the middle of the day and they'd be like, oh, you want to go to this nightclub later? And they'd be like, great. So like we'd all go to this nightclub and they pick us up in a limousine for free, like, and you'd be getting drink for free, and then you go into this nightclub, but they place you on a podium sort of thing, so you knew that they were trying to get girls into the clubs to attract male customers in, which is so, when you think about it, I just got very depressed about it, and that was something about America that I really like, what the whole promotions work as well. When we did that football tournament and they lined us up, and this man came around and he was like, you, and you. And he pointed out the girls that he thought were prettiest or most beautiful. And they were allowed to go outside and interact with all the people in the tournament. And the rest of us had to actually work. The rest of us were hidden away, squirreled in, and we had to like serve food and canapes and stuff. While the most beautiful ones could be seen having a good time. And for an impressionable young girl at the time, I was kind of like, oh, this is the way the world works. And I found that quite depressing. But on the other hand, it was just how, and it kind of still is, how American culture works.
It's very old-fashioned, isn't it?
Very much so. And they were like, we love your style, or we love your look about certain, it was never me. but I kind of felt liberated in some way, because I was like, okay, so I'm not considered conventionally beautiful, therefore I have to have a bit more about me, you know. But like nowadays, like, say the most beautiful person I've met in my life was a man who ran a half marathon with a cage on his leg, and he passed me out, and he was wearing this like highlighter yellow jersey, and I hadn't trained for the half marathon, so I was panting, and he passed me out, and I just looked at him running, and he'd like a beautiful stride, and I was just like, imagine going through like the level of trauma that he had with like a leg injury, and still managing to get to that point where you run a half marathon. And I just thought he was gorgeous, like. And I suppose living in Belfast, even, like, my parameters of what I perceived as beautiful really changed. And I think the older that you get, the more you change your perceptions of what beauty can be. But in America, the reason why I probably wouldn't live in America is because that their conventions of beauty, or their standards of beauty, is so set in these harmful kind of ways that kind of feeds into a depressive society and really restrictive society.
That was the thing I noticed when I was there, even when my first days there, like a policeman coming over to me and, you know, where are you from, Ireland? And I'm from Ireland, you know, about 5 generations ago. But yeah. I was looking at him going, it was like he was talking like something out of an American movie. And the part I couldn't figure out is are they copying what they see in movies? Like even the thing about jocks and cheerleaders, or are movies reflecting that? I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what American people are like. And that's exactly what I thought as well. Because when I went onto public transport, there was all these like movie characters around me. And like you say, it's very hard to know whether they are copying what they see in movies, or whether life reflects art or art reflects life. It's
exactly.
They have this mindset that they see themselves as the main character in their sort of movie, and you're just the set. You are the meet cute, or you are the extra but in their life, you know.
Exactly.
It's all very superficial. Like if you because I used to think that if I was a beautiful woman, that all of life's pain would just have no effect on me, like it would protect me. But kind of like making friends with girls who I would be jealous of because they were so beautiful and physically gorgeous and attractive, I kind of came to realize that they're just as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable. And everyone, no matter how much society might value them more, that doesn't reflect on their own sense of worth or self-esteem. And it might actually damage it, because they might think, I shouldn't feel this way because I have so much going for me, or whatever.
I remember when I was doing my J1 going to New York, and one of the bits of advice we were given was, don't look like a tourist. And I remember, like, my first day, after about 10 minutes, I went, feck this. And I just said, don't look up. And I just spent my whole time looking up, because I'm in New York. I'm going to enjoy this.
I'm going to look up.
Exactly. I'm not going to act like a local. I'm not a local. I want to enjoy this city, Like, it is amazing there, isn't it? It is like a movie set there.
God. Yeah, like one of my favorite books is Just Kids by Patti Smith. Mm-hmm. And it's a book about her moving to New York in the 70s. And she meets Robert Mapplethorpe, who is a photographer, and becomes her best friend. And it's just the two of them trying to make it as artists in the Chelsea Hotel in New York, and all of the people that they meet there. So I had a huge expectation of New York, and it did not disappoint. And I didn't even plan to go there. Like, there was two girls on the trip who kind of took the reins, and they were like the mammies, and they were the ones who were like, okay, we're going to LA today, we're going to Santa Monica today. And it just so happened that New York was a stopover. And when I got off the flight, the girls always say to me, they're like, I'll never forget your face when you get off the flight. And we landed in New York. And from the minute that I got out of the airport, I was completely in love. And there was nothing that could have happened that would break me from the effect that it had on me. It's just the energy of the city, and the fact that it did look exactly like a movie set, and looked like a place that anything would happen. Like, now, the likes of Times Square, I found that kind of overwhelming, especially all the advertisements and stuff. Right. But like the likes of one of the girls wanted to get a designer bag for her mom, and we went to Chinatown looking for knockoff really good designer bags, and we had an absolute ball, because the crack of trying to find great bags. There's this woman who goes around, she had like a pink umbrella, and she was waiting for the tourists to get off the bus, and she was like, you want handbag? Like, you want Jimmy Choo? You want? And we were like, yeah, we do. And she was like, okay, follow me. And she just turned on her heel, and the umbrella was behind her, and she just like nearly half ran off on us, and we had to keep up with her. And it was the adventure of that. And like, we kept going for about 10 minutes, and we were like, is this the same woman? And she led us into this shop, and we all went in then, and then she turned off the lights, and we were like, what's going to happen? Is she going to murder us? And then like the back door went open, like it was like a secret door, like an annex, and there was like a back room with all of the really good bags or whatever. So even the adventure of like going to New York was, as a tourist, was enough for me. Yeah, I'd love to go back.
And we mentioned earlier on, I said about that line about, you never regret swimming in the sea. So you love sea swimming. Am I right in saying that?
I adore sea swimming. like you say, you never regret a swim in the sea. I got into sea swimming when I read a book, actually. It was a memoir of a woman who lives in the Orkney Islands called Swimming with Seals. And at the time, I was working in a bookshop at the time, and I was putting the book out, and it had a lovely cover. And I'm a sucker for a lovely book cover. I absolutely judge books by their covers. So I had a flick through it, and I wasn't really interested in swimming at the time. And when I was younger, I was awful lazy, so I didn't like the effort of getting wet and having to dry your hair afterwards. But after reading that book, I really got an itch to go swimming in the sea. And even now, it's a great way of, when your head's all over the place and you're feeling a bit, if you're feeling a bit down in the dumps, I'm really missing the sea at the minute, because I always go out to Portmarnock, and the minute my body hits the water and it's freezing, and I think I'm not going to be able to go in at all. Yeah, do you know when your breath catches in your chest, and the sense of achievement I get after going in, you really think your body is just amazing to be able to cope with the level of cold. And then once you're in for a few minutes, the best feeling is like when you start to feel numb and you actually start to feel a bit warm. And I'm just like, this is incredible. And my sister always laughs at me because I always drag her into the sea, and she kind of knows what I mean now, but she's kind of like, oh, like I'm so evangelical about it, and have the nicest cup of tea after, and a crisp sandwich, and it's just the best in the world. I love it.
And the warm clothes when you put on a big jumper or something after,
Yeah.
And
really you appreciate indoor heating, and you appreciate a good shower, Exactly. I just find that it clears my head so much. Yeah, very good.
And so you went to Portmarnock, am I right in saying that you went for a swim the day you finished your novel, was it?
Yeah, so I surprised myself when I finished the novel. I wasn't expecting to finish it that day. I didn't think that I'd finish it at all, to be honest. I spent 10 years telling people that I was writing a novel, but I felt very unsure that I was ever going to finish it. But it was going well, and I was like, Jesus, I think I'm on the last chapter. And I had planned like a couple of weeks to work on the last chapter, but I wrote it very quickly. And on one day, I just realized that I'd written the last line, and it was in the morning time. So my workday wasn't finished, and I was kind of like, what will I do now? And I knew, like, I just hopped into the car with the towel, went to the beach, and I still had my characters in my head. And the end of the novel, the sea is a big theme in the novel, and sea swimming is obviously the things that I get obsessed with. Obviously, work its way into my fiction. Can't help it. So when I went into the water, it was relatively warm, but I felt like I was there with my characters. Sounds strange, but it was very kind of a spiritual thing. I just felt so grateful to like have the moment, the realization that like I brought these characters into the world, and they can now exist in between the covers of a book. Hopefully, I didn't know that it was going to be published, but I was so grateful that I'd finished it, for not only for myself but also for them, and now that I know that the book's going to be read by other people, I'm really excited that but that was the best day of my life. Wow. Finishing and going to the sea, and feeling surrounded by like my imagination, if it doesn't sound too corny,
No, not at all.
because I had a blast with the characters, and they kept me company for 10 years, so it was a really kind of intimate moment.
And you wrote a lovely line. You said travel and writing go hand in hand in your imagination. And I thought that was lovely, because they do, don't they? For inspiring.
Absolutely, yeah. And even the places that I want to go now are linked to writers that I admire, So I want to go to Greece because I know Leonard Cohen was on Hydra, and Joni Mitchell was there. And I want to go to Naples, even though I hear Naples isn't a great place to go. I have awful reports. I
went to Naples and flew in and then went straight out. And I want to go back now, because I reckon it is probably lovely. You know what I mean? Great pizza.
Yeah, and there's if anything else, I'm there for the food first and foremost. Yeah. But my favorite series of novels, the Neapolitan novels, is set in Naples, and there's a tour that brings you around to all the different spots in where the book is set and stuff. So yeah, after lockdown, Italy is my first port of call.
I really appreciate it for giving me your time, and the best of luck with the book.
So much.
So you can't wait for it to come, can you? May.
I feel like I've been talking about it for ages, and everyone's like, it's not even out yet. So yeah, I can't wait for me. And yeah, it's very surreal, very mad. But thanks a million for having me.
I would ask if you could please subscribe to Apple Podcast, so a new episode will appear in your library every week. I would also really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review, as it helps others to discover this podcast. To find out who's on every Tuesday, please follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Travel Tales with Fergal. Stay safe and keep dreaming of future travels.
Travel Tales with Fergal.